I feel like I haven't done these in such a long time, and this is what I started making videos with, 2-sentence horror stories. I'm pretty sure I've never read any of these. I think they are new and I got them off of Reddit. My newly wife playfully smeared icing across my cheek, so in return I smashed her face into the rest of the cake. When she went limp, I pulled her towards me only to see a skewer through her eye. New fear unlocked. I feel like I always see cake makers put those like sticks into the cakes. Oh my god. None of them are pointy though, I think. My wife has ruined my life for so long that I finally hired a hitman. As we sit having lunch, I see him approach and smile, knowing that she'll never be able to forget my exploding face. Well, that was a plot twist. You're very lucky your sister is around to help you learn these lessons, I told my eldest daughter. I turned back to her as I dropped the screaming infant over the balcony, and this is why you don't climb on the railings. Maybe if I wasn't married, I said to let him down gently. The words haunt me now as he stands trial for my husband's murder. What the
Nothing drives me more crazy than when someone dies under mysterious circumstances and there's so much evidence left behind, yet no one knows what actually happened. Or when someone is killed and there's evidence that it could be a major cover-up, yet nothing is certain because of who is involved. This is what's currently happening to Karen Reed, and this is genuinely the first case that I don't know what to believe. If you don't know who this woman is, you should watch the upcoming new true crime docuseries from Investigation Discovery called A Body in the Snow: The Trial of Karen Reed. In just 5 episodes, this special will cover in depth the recent murder trial of Karen Reed, who was accused of murdering her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. This is an extremely high-profile murder case because John was a Boston police officer of 16 years, and yet what exactly happened to him and who was responsible has never been explained. So on January 28th, 2022, Karen and John, who'd been dating for 2 years, went out to a bar. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but on that specific night, everything seemed fine. According to Karen, when they left the bar, she dropped John off at a house where there was going to be an after party. This said house just so happened to belong to a fellow police officer, more specifically, a now retired Boston police sergeant. What followed is still a mystery, but it resulted in John being mortally injured and left for dead in the snow on the front lawn of this sergeant's house. His body wouldn't be found until the next morning, and almost immediately, all fingers were pointed at Karen. Evidence was found that really incriminated her, and so she was arrested and charged with his murder. But here's the thing. Said evidence reportedly could have been planted by police in an attempt to frame Karen. At least that's what she's saying happened. And conveniently enough, not a single witness actually saw Karen do anything. So this case went to trial in 2024, which resulted in a mistrial. This docuseries walks you through the evidence found, and it lets you hear every possible angle from those involved in the case, including Karen herself. In fact, for the majority of the series, you will hear from Karen directly, and one thing that I found interesting was how at one moment she was talking about her old life, and the very next she was somehow being accused of murdering a Boston police officer. But one thing that I appreciated in this series was how closely it followed Karen, because it really gave you the chance to examine her words and her body language. In the show, the trial was described as a murder carnival, and that's exactly what it was. I can guarantee you that just by watching this, you will never hear of a more twisted case, and the facts they present are going to make your jaw drop. Could Karen really be responsible for such a heinous crime? Or is there something much more sinister at play, possibly involving those with power who we are supposed to trust? Watch A Body in the Snow: The Trial of Karen Reed to find out for yourself. This docuseries is premiering on Investigation Discovery over 3 nights, March 17th and 18th, and the finale on March 19th at 9 p.m. I need you guys to watch this.
Spooky story time. A follower named Annalisa sent me this video and we're going to call it The Face on the Door. She also sent us proof, so I'm going to post that as well. Annalisa says that they live in a new house. They've been there for a few years, but they were the first people to ever live in that house because the house was brand new. And she says that she knows for a fact that this house is absolutely haunted. She did try to do some research on the land, and she wasn't able to find anything specific, so she has no idea where any of this is coming from. She says that there are at least 2 spirits in her home. She says that one of these spirits is a child, and the child loves to play peekaboo. She says that she could be watching TV or whatever, and on the corner of her eye, she can see the child kind of like peeking around corners or like the footboard of the bed, and loves to move stuff around like lollipops and stuff. She says with that spirit, it's mostly silly things that he does, but it's still very creepy. The other spirit, she says, is completely opposite. That he is very tall, about 6'5", and he just has this dark and heavy presence. She says that her son, who's 15, has seen this apparition multiple times. One time through a mirror. Another time he was standing in the hallway bathroom, looked at him, and walked through the wall into the next bedroom. And she says she's never seen her son that scared in her entire life. Even her mom has had experiences with this presence. She said that one time her mom was asleep on the couch. She's out. That next morning, she feels someone sit on the couch. And she's kind of annoyed because she thinks it's her husband. And she's like, what do you want? Like, I'm asleep. No answer. So she sits up and there's nobody on the couch. She goes and she checks and her husband is fast asleep on the bed. The creepiest of all, she says that she was outside playing with her babies one day, enjoying the nice weather. And out of nowhere, she just looks at their screen door in the front and she notices an imprint of a man's face. I'm going to enter that here. She's Native American, and she says that she thinks that whatever this is, whatever spirit this is also Native American because of some features that he has. She does want to dig deeper, but she's low-key kind of scared about opening a door that she might not be able to close. She does want me to add that they've never used anything crazy like a Ouija board inside that house or anything like that. So she doesn't know what it could possibly be or why there's even spirits in this house. She's even used sage to cleanse that house and it works for a little bit, but they always end up coming back. What do you guys think? Thank you so much to Annalisa for sending me this spooky story. That picture that you sent is... I showed it to my husband and I was like, hell no. If you guys have any spooky stories that you'd like for me to share, please send them via DM or email and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye.
Got an email from a 911 operator to tell us their spooky story. Now, in the email, she said, this isn't my story, but this happened to my boss. But my boss is the type of guy who's not going to embellish. He's not going to make things up for attention. We're going to call her boss John. John says that one night he was working, it was late, and a call comes in. He picks up the call, and on the other end of the line, there is a man. And this man is telling him that where he is living right now, there is an active DV situation happening. The man on the line gives John the address and requests that he send officers. John dispatches the officers to the address that was provided to him. He tells the officers there's a man in the house who is calling to report a DV situation. He is calling from the landline and he is requesting that someone come. The officers go, they show up, they knock on the door, a woman answers. They ask the woman, is there anything happening in this house right now? The woman just answers, no, nothing is going on. The officer then proceeds to tell her, well, we had a call from the landline at this house that there is an active DV situation happening. The officer that is talking to the woman looks behind her and notices that her husband is standing there just very menacingly. But once again, the woman tells the officers, we're the only people in the house, we did not call, nothing is going on. But the police officer that is talking to her just is not buying it. So he pries for a little more information, he asks her again, and once again she says no. At this point, there's nothing that the officer can do. This woman is not going to report that she's dealing with any abuse or a DV situation, so he just has to take her word for it and leave. So the officers do end up leaving, but the officer that was talking to her, he's just got a bad feeling, like something is not right in this house. So he ends up going back to the 911 operator and telling the 911 operator that he would like a recording of the call. Now, I am not sure how this works now, but at this time, in order to get that recording, they had to get a judge involved. So they get the judge involved, he releases the recording, it's given to the officer. When the officer gets that recording, he calls the woman and asks her to come in. He brings her into a room, he sits her down, he presses play on the recorder. When the woman hears whose voice is on the other end of that line calling, she starts to cry. She tells the officer, the man on the other end of the line is my dad, but that's not possible because my dad is no longer with us. He has passed away. He was passed away when this call came in, and it's not possible that this is him. But after this woman hears her father's voice on this call, she breaks down and she tells the officer everything. She is indeed living in an abusive situation. She is indeed experiencing domestic violence. Once she tells the police officers about this, that man, her husband, is arrested on DV charges. But the woman still says, like, there's no way that my dad made that call, but he did, and it did come from her landline. Now, the last time that I shared a first responder story about a strange call, Cole was basically in those comments fighting for his freaking life. So when this story came in, I decided before I told it I was going to do a little bit of research. I looked for it online, I didn't find anything. I called my friend who's a paramedic and I asked him to ask around to see if this story is something that floats around within that community, at least here locally, and he said no. I then went in and I asked ChatGPT if this story exists anywhere on the internet, and it said no, it does not. While there are ghostly calls that have been reported, this specific story does not exist. I did not do this because I do not believe or trust the person who sent this to me. I did this to head off whatever's coming next. When it came to Cole's story, the nastiness that I saw in those comments and the abuse of throwing around power was ridiculous. Even when a real person, a real man, a real paramedic is in the comments telling you, no, this is my story, this is really what happened to me. I'm not saying that it's paranormal, I'm just saying I can't explain it. And just like the responses that he was getting and how nasty people were to him, that's not going to happen here. And now, while I am all for open discussion and questions and taking everything with a grain of salt and being a skeptic does not give you the right to insult another human being. Not to the level that I saw. I just went on ahead and I did that research to hopefully head off some of that. Thank you so much, and everyone have, well, literally just the day you deserve.
The following story would make me never want to be home alone. I was home alone for a weekend a few years ago while I was still in high school. After school one day, I was driving home, and when I passed in front of my house, I thought I saw some old lady in white clothes in my sister's room looking through the window. I'll be driving past my house. I thought it was stupid, so I went into the room to check out what it actually was, but I couldn't find anything. I pretty much just forgot about it until later that night. I got a call from a very panicked and scared neighbor saying there was some old lady pacing back and forth in my sister's room. Well, neighbor, you might want to scooch over because I'm staying at your house. I still have no idea what it was, and I've never seen anything like it since. Can you imagine the neighbor though, like knowing there's no old lady living there but someone's pacing back and forth? That sounds like The Visit type shit. Have you guys seen that movie? Anyway, what do you guys think? What would you have done? Because I know for a fact I wouldn't have even stopped. Like, yeah, no, I wouldn't have stopped. I wouldn't have gone into my sister's room. Let's just say I did. Neighbor calls me at night telling me somebody's pacing back and forth. Neighbor, yeah, I'm gonna live with you now until my parents come back. What do you guys think?
I have another spooky story for you guys. This one was submitted to me by an ER nurse. She does want to remain anonymous, so I won't tag her, but she did want to share her spooky story with us in our little community. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it and read off her story. I've been a nurse for almost 12 years, most of the time working overnights in emergency departments. You see a lot in the middle of the night, but you get used to the chaos. Most of the time, any strange experiences can be attributed to the exhaustion that comes with working long overnight shifts, but this incident was completely real and completely unexplainable. This took place when I was working at a small rural hospital. The night started out like any other, with multiple patients coming in for various ailments. By 4 a.m., new patients had stopped coming in, and everyone who had come in that night was already taken care of. The lights were dim, and it was just me, another nurse named Clara, names changed, and a couple of other nurses. While I was slow, I decided to restock the linens near room 105. Room 105 was at the far end of the hallway. It was one of the older rooms with bad lighting and the only one with no window. None of us liked going in there because there was always something off about that room. It felt like the air was heavier than it should be. We always joked that it was haunted, especially because the call bell from that room would sometimes go off even when the room was empty and all machines were unplugged. So anyway, I'm loading sheets into the cabinet just outside the room, and I swear I hear something that sounds like whispering. It was faint and sounded like someone was just talking through a fan. At first I thought it was Clara on the phone, but when I looked around, the hallway was empty. The sound seemed to be coming from inside the room. I opened the door to look inside and saw that all the lights had been off except for the bathroom light. That was strange because I had cleaned the room myself an hour earlier and shut everything off. I stood in the doorway for a few seconds trying to listen, and that's when I heard it again. A whispery voice, this time clearer, saying, "Don't go." I wish I could say I calmly investigated, but I didn't. I slammed the door shut and practically ran back to the nurse's station. Clara saw my face and immediately asked what was wrong. I told her what I heard, and she said, "Was it a woman's voice?" I nodded yes. She got real quiet and told me that years ago, a patient had passed away in that same room. A woman in her 30s was in and out of consciousness when she came in, and they were ultimately unable to save her. Clara said that right before the woman passed, she grabbed her hand and said, "Don't go, I'm scared." A few hours later, right before the end of our shift, a trauma came in from a bad car accident with 2 patients. I helped wheel one of them into room 105 because it was the only open bed at the time. He was unconscious and needed to be intubated. As we got him settled, I started to feel that heavy pressure in the air. A while later, another nurse came in to check his vitals and then left to grab a portable monitor. I was alone in the room with the patient for only a few minutes, and in those few minutes, something happened that I still can't explain. The monitor started beeping like it had lost connection, even though all the leads were secure. Then the bathroom light flickered. And then the patient opened his eyes. His eyes looked unfocused and as if they were looking past me. And his lips started moving, but there was no sound as he was just mouthing words. I leaned down to try and hear what he was saying, and I swear on my license, I saw a shadow move across the wall behind me. But no one was there. The patient grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't leave me." A second later, he started seizing. The other nurses rushed in, stabilized him, and got him moved to ICU. He made it, thank God. But when he came to the next day, he asked one of the day shift nurses who the crying lady was in his room the night before. He said she stood in the corner by the bathroom and watched him all night. I never figured out if the crying lady was there because she's scared to move on or because she wants someone else to stay behind with her. Either way, I avoided that room as much as I could from then on. So what do you guys think about what she experienced? Leave your thoughts down in the comments and don't forget to like and follow for more spooky stories.
I don't get how a children's group home can continue to stay open when there's been 30 missing person cases from it in just the past 3 years. And now this little girl who recently went missing from said group home turns up dead 3 weeks after she was last seen. The details surrounding this case are incredibly disturbing and gruesome, and her killer is still on the loose. So let's talk about it. This is Emily Pike. She was 14 years old when she mysteriously disappeared on January 27th of this year. She was last seen near Mesa Drive and McKellips Road in Mesa, Arizona, leaving the group home where she lived on foot. The group home where Emily lived has not been publicly identified for privacy reasons because minors lived there, but it's in this general area. According to news sources, the group home's website says that they serve girls between the ages of 7 and 17, and Emily was one of those girls. Emily was from the San Carlos Apache tribe, and she had reportedly moved to the area because there were better resources for mental health. Not a lot is known about this case, but what we do know is that after Emily left her group home, she completely disappeared. And when she failed to come home that night, a manager at the home reported her missing to the Gila County Sheriff's Office. Authorities were able to look through security footage from nearby businesses and determine that she was last seen in this area, near Mesa Drive and McKellips Road. But nothing appeared suspicious on the footage, and where she went and what happened to her from this point forward has never been explained. Emily was missing for nearly 3 weeks when authorities made a gruesome discovery, which just so happened to be on Valentine's Day. Just off of Highway 60 in Globe, Arizona, were trash bags along the road, and in them were Emily's dismembered remains. This is about 73 miles away from where she was last seen, and this is an extremely remote area. There were no businesses or houses anywhere for miles, so this made finding out how she got to this area and who put her there incredibly difficult, since there were no cameras. Her head and torso were in separate bags, and some of her remains, including her arms and hands, are still missing as we speak. Her cause of death is still being investigated, but it was reported that she suffered from facial and head trauma. When she died has yet to be revealed as well. This is obviously incredibly disturbing, but how it was revealed to everyone is just as bad. Information about Emily's murder was leaked online from the Gila County Sheriff's Office. They somehow posted a memo which leaked the disturbing nature of Emily's body on their social media page, and this sparked outrage, rightfully so. I recently heard about Emily's story, but I didn't realize how horrifying it was until I looked into it myself. What's crazy is the fact that the group home where Emily lived had 30 missing person cases from it in just the past 3 years. This has recently come to light thanks to a public information officer with the Mesa Police Department. That's insane to me, and I guess I don't know a lot about group homes, but that just does not seem normal to me, like at all. According to authorities, they don't believe that Emily was killed where her remains were found, and although they're saying that they have received a lot of tips, whoever did this is still out there. As of today, Thursday, March 13th, there are no suspects in this case, and no arrests have been made. That is horrifying to think about, especially with how gruesome this case is. The FBI is now assisting in tracking this killer down, but local police say that there is no active threat to the public, which is crazy to me considering the nature in which Emily was killed, and the fact that whoever did such a heinous thing is still just roaming free. Emily was only 14 years old. She was a literal child. She loved the color pink, did really well in school, and was described as a creative, kind-hearted little girl who loved butterflies, music, and art. The fact that more people aren't talking about this is alarming because the system failed her. This isn't just a one-off situation either. Indigenous children in the foster care system are reported missing and are murdered at a higher rate than anyone else in the system. We cannot let what happened to Emily be forgotten, and this needs to be a reality check. This has to wake you up to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. Emily's murder has caused outrage, and crowds of people have come together to push for change, which is working. Right now, there's a new bill in Arizona that's seeking to create an Amber Alert style system for missing Indigenous people, which I hope passes. I'm not entirely sure what what we can do to help make that happen. But a good place to start is to keep telling Emily's story and all of the other stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children. This has to stop. They all deserve justice, and their cases deserve attention too.
Spooky story time. A follower that wants to remain anonymous sent me this story, and we're gonna call it That Wasn't Me. For the sake of the story, we're gonna call her Macy. Macy says that since she was a toddler, her family tells her that they would see her standing in the hallway talking to nobody. She says that she would always see shadows and hear things. So weird things have always happened to her. Macy says that when she was about 8 years old, her mom married a man and they had their first son together. So being a big sister, she was so excited. She says she was kind of like a tiny mom and she would always help her mom with her little brother. She says that they lived in a duplex and it was only a 1-bedroom home, but it was very big and they all shared that 1 bedroom. She had a loft bed with a desk underneath and there was a vanity right across from her with a mirror. One night, her baby brother wakes up crying and she opens her eyes and she kind of looks over to make sure that he's being taken care of, which he was. Mama was already up. She turns to her side, happens to look at the mirror in the vanity, and she sees a shadow standing underneath her loft bed, holding a baby and kind of like rocking it like this. No, ma'am. Freaking out, she clears her eyes, looks at the crib, baby brother's in there, so she's like, okay, cool. Looks over at the mirror and the image is gone. Another night, she's literally in the middle of her sleep and she gets the urge to wake up. She opens her eyes, she looks over, and there the shadow is underneath her loft. She looks, she can see it through the mirror, and she says she can just feel that whatever that was, it was looking right at her. She's like, hell nah, turns over, forces herself to go to sleep. Some time passes and now her mom is pregnant with her little sister. Again, they were living in a 1-bedroom home, so they're kind of forced and they have to move somewhere else because there's no way 5 people are going to fit in one room. She gets sent off to bed early. She doesn't go to sleep because the light is on. Her mom's husband is packing stuff, and in one of those runs, she decides to look and she sees like the top of a little girl's head. No one else sees it, so she kind of just tries to ignore it. She turns around and she's like, all right, I'm going to bed. She ends up moving to her grandparents' house because she starts having issues with her mom's husband. And it's her grandparents, her aunt, who's 1 year younger. If you're Mexican, you already know the vibes. And herself. One day, she walks into their house and she sees that her aunt is kind of peeking at her from the kitchen. Macy's like, okay, weirdo, like, why are you looking at me like that? Her aunt tells her, did you just get here? Macy's like, yeah, I'm just walking in. What's going on? Her aunt is like, I saw you get here earlier. I saw you open the gate and everything, and you just never walked in. Macy's like, impossible. I just got here. I'm just now walking through the door. I don't know what to tell you. Her aunt is freaking out because she's like, I know what I saw. Macy's just reassuring her, like, honey, I just got here. They drop it. A completely different day. Macy is at her house with her boyfriend and her siblings, and they are in her bedroom watching a movie. One of her other aunts was in town visiting, and her aunt walks into the bedroom and she says, please tell me that you just walked into the kitchen. Macy is like, no, I've been in here watching a movie the whole time. Her other aunt is like, Macy, no, I saw you. You were walking out of the kitchen. I was calling for you and you were ignoring me, just walking away from me down the hallway. Macy says that she's always been weirded out about stuff like that because people claim to see her and that's clearly not her. So she has no idea who it is, or what it wants. She ended up moving a little bit after that with her boyfriend, who is now her husband. She does have 2 kids. And she says that, again, she's always seen things. She's always heard things. She's obviously seen shadows and she doesn't know why. She says the most recent thing is a little bit after she had her second baby. She ran into this weird lady and she was just looking at her weird and talking to her. And she says that she was gonna. What do you guys think? Personally, I think that Macy might have a gift. She just doesn't know how to like maybe open that third eye. And I feel like if she were to really dedicate and learn how to use that, I think she could really see some stuff. Thank you so much to Macy for sending me this story. If you guys have any other spooky stories that you'd like for me to share, send them via DM or email and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
I I have another spooky story for you guys. I'm super excited about this one because the person who submitted it to me, she does want to stay anonymous, so I won't tag her, but she did let me know that she is a medium. And this story that she's sharing with us is the scariest thing that has ever happened to her. So let's get started. I'm going to read to you her story. I come from a long line of mediums. My great-grandmother was the person people would call to help their loved ones transition while they were passing away. My grandmother was a psychic medium who could read tea leaves. My mother spoke to spirits in her dreams, and I've been able to sense energies as long as I can remember. My grandmother always said I was the most sensitive and powerful medium in our family, and encouraged me to use my gifts to help people. So when I'm not working my 9 to 5 and taking care of my family, that's what I do. Most of the time, what I see and feel is gentle. I've communicated with lost souls, confused spirits, and even passed messages from loved ones to their living relatives. But this story, this is the one that keeps me up at night. The only time I've ever truly feared for my soul and the soul of the people I was trying to help. It all started with a phone call from a woman who I'll call Rachel. She called me asking for help because she was convinced that her house was haunted. She and her husband, Tom, moved into the house with their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, just a few months before. Since then, they've been plagued with sleepless nights, cold spots, and a general feeling of being watched. I hear this kind of thing often, but there was something different in her voice. She sounded scared and desperate. I couldn't imagine leaving a nice family like this in distress, so I agreed to meet them at the house to see if I could help. From the outside, the house seemed pretty normal. It was a lovely 3-bedroom colonial on a quiet suburban street. It didn't scream haunted, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. There was a weight in the air that felt like walking underwater. When Rachel greeted me at the door, I immediately noticed how tired she looked. Her energy felt heavy, like that of someone who is carrying a high emotional burden. Her husband, Tom, hovered behind her, but seemed to be avoiding eye contact with me. Their daughter, who I'll call Lily, peeked out from behind the staircase, but kept her distance. I introduced myself and asked Rachel and Tom to explain what they had been experiencing. Tom didn't speak much, but Rachel explained that it all started with Lily saying that she heard knocking sounds coming from below her bedroom floor at night. Rachel and Tom dismissed the noises as just being part of the house, but Lily kept insisting that something was trying to get her. A little while after Lily first mentioned the knocking, she started drawing pictures that concerned her parents. When Rachel brought the drawings to me, I immediately felt a deep sense of dread. All of the drawings were of people without eyes, and some had mouths that were stitched shut. As soon as I touched one of the images to get a better sense of what was behind them, I became nauseous and had to run to the bathroom to avoid getting sick all over the images. I wanted to run out of the house so bad, but I just couldn't leave these people to deal with whatever this was alone. When I returned, Rachel continued describing more experiences. She had seen toys moving in Lily's room and had recently started hearing voices. Lily's behavior was also getting worse. She used to be a sweet, outgoing girl, but now she was having angry outbursts and only wanted to talk to herself in her room while drawing. To get a better sense of what I was dealing with, I told the family that I would walk around the house alone. As soon as I got to Lily's room, I knew I had found the source of the negative energy. That feeling of dread from touching Lily's drawings came rushing through me. I started feeling short of breath and became lightheaded. I had never been so overwhelmed by an entity in my entire life. As soon as I stepped out of the room, I saw Lily standing directly in front of me with a blank stare. I said hi to her and asked where her parents were. She ignored my question. Instead, she said, quote, "He talks to me when mommy and daddy are asleep. He says this is his house. He wants me to stay forever." I asked who he was, but she just started crying and ran off. At this point, I was sure there was a malevolent being in the home, but I would need to do a reading to be sure. I got Rachel and Tom's consent to perform the reading and began the process. As soon as I started saging the home, the banging sound Rachel told me about started. It followed me throughout the house, so I knew it wasn't a coincidence. When I was done, Rachel and Tom joined me at the kitchen table. I poured a ring of salt around us, and we held hands as I opened the door in my mind that separates the physical world from the spiritual. Immediately, I felt it. This was not just a spirit, it was a presence, an angry presence. I saw flashes of a man pacing throughout the house as a woman screamed. Then there was blood, and finally, complete darkness and a feeling like I was falling. Then something whispered in my ear, "She's mine." I snapped out of it and looked toward the kitchen doorway. Lily, who was supposed to be in her room, was there again. Her expression was cold and blank, and she was just staring directly at me. Tom saw her too and asked what she was doing out of her room. Lily didn't even acknowledge her dad. She continued staring at me and said, quote, "He says you can't help." Again, I asked who he is, but she didn't need an answer. Behind her, a tall shadow manifested out of thin air. Lily started screaming, but it wasn't a child's scream. Rachel and Tom, who couldn't even see the shadow, ran right over to Lily and tried to calm her down. Eventually, she did stop screaming. Lily eventually went to take a nap, and while she was napping, I told Rachel and Tom what I had seen and informed them that this type of presence was evil and was attached to their house. It was not going to leave easily and was actively trying to harm their family, so their options were to either banish the presence from the home, which would be incredibly difficult, or to just move. Well, it seemed they were already ahead of me because Rachel and Tom had made arrangements to live somewhere else while they attempted to sell the home. Long story short, I bought the house. I couldn't let another family go through what Rachel, Tom, and Lily did, so I've kept it empty all these years.
What if on an average day you are waking up every morning with cuts and bruises on your body like this from unseen forces? Well, this is what's happening to Lexi and her family right now. We are not using real names. They want to stay anonymous for now. But when I tell you this is a whirlwind storm of paranormal activity, I mean it. It is ongoing right now and it is absolutely terrifying. And it comes with receipts and documentation throughout the entire video. I am probably going to have to make a series on this. I will put the full version of each story that I tell on here on YT. The link is in the link tree in my bio. And in my bio is also my email where you can send me your true scary story. It's kaisaspooky@gmail.com. So Lexi and her boyfriend have been dealing with paranormal stuff their entire life, but it really started to amp up a lot after her ex-best friend died. Now, her ex-best friend had a love interest in her that was not reciprocated, and this is what ended their friendship because it resulted in him being completely chaotic, insane, and unfortunately, he would pass away in a motorcycle accident. But the last words that he would say to Lexi would be, "No one is ever going to love you like I do," and he meant this wholeheartedly, and he would make sure that this happened after he passed away. After he passed away, every single person that Lexi would date would actually end up in a mental institution. But that is not even the craziest part. Jared, we're going to call him Jared, had a serpent tattoo on his back. You need to remember that. This will play a crucial role in Lexi's suffering going forward with the instances I'm about to talk to you about. Some odd years after Jared passed away, Lexi would be introduced to Tristan. Tristan and her would fall in love, and they would eventually end up running a business together. It was a bar. We're going to call it a bar. One day, Lexi and Tristan decide that they're going to go to Vegas and they want to go to the Zach Bagans Museum. So this is what they do. As soon as they walk into the museum, Lexi's ankles start itching, and she says something to Tristan. She's like, "Hey, my ankles are really itching. It's very weird." And they just are like, "Okay, well, I mean, maybe it's something like you have a rash or you're allergic to something in here," so they kind of let it go. As they're going through the museum with their group, they are the last person to walk in every single room. Now, really weird things start happening on this tour, but they are only happening when Tristan and Lexi walk into the room. For instance, they go into this room called the Devil's Staircase, and nothing was happening until they walked into the room. There's a spirit box in this room, and as soon as Lexi walks into the room, the spirit box starts spitting out words. It starts saying, "Bitch, yellow dress, bitch." Now, Lexi is wearing an orange dress, and she is the only female in the room wearing a dress. So everybody is super creeped out by this. Then they go into the next room, which is called the Haunted Peggy Doll Room. This also has a spirit box in it, and you have to say hello and goodbye to the doll. They make you say it. Lexi was not comfortable with saying this, but she did say it anyways. So they're in the room, the spirit box is not saying anything at all, and they go to leave, and she says bye to the doll, and the doll, after not speaking at all, says,
"Bye, orange dress."
through the spirit box. At this point, everybody on the tour guide is like, we don't want to be in any rooms with these people. Like, no one wanted to be in any rooms with them. The tour guide switched tour guides, did not want anything to do with them. They said that nothing paranormal like this had ever happened until they came there. Like, it had never gotten like this. Well, after this and some other stuff that happened, which will be on my YT, they decide that they want to go. They want to leave. They want to go to a hookah bar. So they go to a hookah bar and they're standing there when all of a sudden Lexi is like, "My back is burning. My back hurts really bad." So Tristan lifts up her shirt and this is what they see. She has scratch marks all down her back. The story just gets crazier and crazier because after this, they're like, "We want to leave." So they go back to their hotel room. Tristan said that at this point, Lexi started acting really weird, but he was trying to ignore it. She was sort of acting like she was possessed in a way. But he said that he didn't want to feed it any energy, so he didn't pay any attention to it at all. So they go to sleep. The next morning they wake up. Lexi gets up. She stands up out out of bed. They look at where she was laying, and there's a burn mark where she was laying. Then she looks at her toenails and her fingernails, and they are black, like charcoal black. She also had boils on her body and her feet, which look like this. So at this point, they're like, we need to go get help. We need to go seek out a shaman. So they go and find a place where a shaman is. It's a store. They pull up, they stop their car, they get out of the car, they start walking up. The shaman sees them and he locks the door. Doesn't want to let them in, wants nothing to do with them. They somehow finally get the shaman to let them in, and the shaman hands her water. And she takes the water, she drinks it, and she said that her body just started burning. And she was like, I do not want this water. So the shaman is like, okay. So he takes her next door to a psychic. And we can only assume what was in that bottle of water. I have a feeling that it was holy water, but it was not verified. Now, the psychic would tell them something absolutely terrifying. The psychic would tell them that she has a serpent spirit wrapped around her entire body, draining all of the energy from her. Ring any bells? Serpent? Serpent tattoo, serpent spirit. The psychic gave them a bunch of stuff to protect themselves with so that they would get home safe, and also so that they could protect themselves when they were home. But the only problem is that this would not help at all, because when they got home, the activity would spike up like crazy. They don't know if this had anything to do with the museum or anything to do with Jared or both. Remember how I told you that they had a business together? Well, something about this business picked up a lot of this energy. They would look at their security cameras and there would be orbs flying, hundreds of orbs flying all the time. One time, Tristan is in the bar and he walks towards the bathroom and he feels something behind him and he can't figure out what it is. He goes inside of the bathroom and he comes out of the bathroom. This is all on video. I'm about to show you a screenshot. He comes out of the bathroom and you see an orb fly out of the bathroom, and then you see this tall, dark shadow right behind him and standing in front of the bathroom door after he walks away. This is that shadow right here. And I have the actual footage. If you guys want to see it, just drop it in the comments. And the crazy thing about this, guys, is I have seen a picture of Jared. I can't show it to you right now, but the silhouette of this thing looks exactly like his physique. And unfortunately, their children would start to experience things that would absolutely terrify them, especially the oldest daughter. The oldest daughter was actually just hospitalized recently. I will get into that in another video or on YT, but she starts experiencing tapping on her window at night. Tap, 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 tap. And she just ignores it because she's like, what if it's a tree? Like, she's trying to explain it away because it's really scaring her and she's hearing it every single night. Then one day she's in the hallway of the house and she feels something staring at her at the end of the hallway. And she said that she actually saw a picture of it in her head. She first sees a picture of it in her head and then she sees it in real life. So she sees a picture of this tall, lanky, skinny person. Doesn't even really look like a person. It's so tall, it looks kind of like a creature. It has very long fingers and very sharp, pointy fingernails, and it's crawling towards her. Now, at this point, she can't really see its face. As soon as she sees this, her uncle is actually waiting outside for her, and she runs outside and gets in his truck. As soon as she gets in his truck, she looks over at the apartment hallway, and then she visually sees this thing crawling on the wall of the hallways of the apartments, just going from wall to wall, and it's looking at her. And this time she can see it more clearly. It has wide, bright white eyes with black little dots in the middle. Its smile was just gross. It was huge from ear to ear, literally. And the way that it was crawling on the wall scared the shit out of her. But it would not scare her half as bad as realizing that those long, sharp fingernails were perfect for tapping on windows. This story gets 10 times more intense, you guys, but I have to stop now because it's almost 10 minutes. It's way longer than this. Like I said, I will be making a series, and a longer version of this part of the story will be on my... That is if you guys comment and want me to. But please tell us what you guys think this is. Do you think this has something to do with Jared? Do you think it has something to do with the museum? Maybe both. They're past. They need help. They want to know what to do, and they want to know what's going on, and they want your advice. Please pray for the oldest daughter and Lexi. The oldest daughter just got out of the hospital. They have no idea what's wrong with her, and Lexi is just experiencing the worst part of it. But guys, my name is Kaisa and I tell true scary stories on here every single night. So if you like that, hit that follow button. And I am about to share with you one of my favorite fashion products. You do not have to stay if you don't want to, but you can support me and watch if you'd like. Guys, this dress is from Retro Stage. It is velvet. It is absolutely gorgeous. And there are two ways that you can wear it, like this, or with this cute little addition, which I think is absolutely adorable. Look at the shoes too with it. You have to wear nice shoes with it. Perfect for date night, you guys, or if you have somewhere that you need to wear like a classy dress to. Perfect. Love it. I'm gonna drop the link for you guys right there. I love you guys to death, and you know it. I just need you to do one more thing for me, and what is that? Have a spooky night. Love you guys. See you in the next one.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight elderly man with grey hair No one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This husband was hiding a secret that he was willing to kill to keep. His entire life was a lie, and his pregnant wife had no idea who she was really married to. So this is Mark Hacking. Growing up, Mark was one of 7 kids. Family was very religious. They were part of the Mormon church, and they lived outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. As far as I could find, it seemed like Mark had a pretty ideal childhood. But since Mark was very young, he was an attention seeker and a liar, like a huge compulsive liar. Mark was definitely the class clown in school, and he wanted all eyes on him. And it was actually when Mark was 17 years old during a camping trip that he met his future wife, 15-year-old Lori Suarez. Like a big dummy, Mark put his entire hand in a campfire as a joke, and he obviously got really burned. Lori came to his aid, did some first aid, and that's how they met. Lori also grew up really religious through the Mormon church, and she was the kind of girl who seemed like she had it all. She was outgoing, friendly, popular, smart, good at sports, and even class president. Her and Mark were high school sweethearts, and they were seen as the perfect couple and like a power couple. After high school, when Mark was 19 years old, he joined the Mormon ministries. I don't know much about this. From what I've read, Mark would be going on a mission trip to Canada with other Mormon boys to try and convert people in Canada to Mormonism. And from what I've read, it seemed like this was like really sacred work in the Mormon church, but almost immediately after getting to Canada, Mark just started breaking all the rules. He was drinking, partying, and also sleeping around, so also he's cheating on his girlfriend Lori back home. Mark was caught and he was kicked out and sent back to Utah, and this was really serious. Apparently Mark's family was a pretty big deal in the Mormon church, and getting kicked out of the ministries is something that will like bring shame upon your family, so this was a really big deal. But with like everything in Mark's life, Mark just found a way to lie himself out of it. Mark and Lori together went to the University of Utah. During that time, they actually got married. Lori graduated college and got a really great job. Mark was in school a little bit longer than Lori because he was actually in the pre-med program. Yes, Mark was going to become a doctor, and his entire family was just full of high achievers. Mark's dad was a doctor, his brother was a doctor, his other brother was an engineer. In 2004, Mark and Lori were 28 and 27 years old. They've been married for 5 years, and Mark finally graduates with his pre-med degree, and he actually gets into a really great med school in North Carolina. And this was a really exciting time for the couple. Mark just got accepted into a great med school. They were about to make this big move from Utah to North Carolina so he can go to med school, and that's a move that's like all the way across the entire country. And it was also at this time that Lori found out that she was pregnant. So this was like such a great time, but it was all about to start crumbling down. On July 16th, 2004, Lori calls this med school in North Carolina to talk about some financial aid options, and the university tells Lori that no one by her husband's name is enrolled in that school, and not only that, no one by her husband's name had even applied to their med school. Can you even imagine being Lori right now? Okay, she's pregnant. She's already given notice at her job that she's gonna be leaving her job because she's planning to move all the way across the country. And for what? She finds out that her husband is lying. She confronts her husband, Mark, about this, but of course he lies. He says that this has to be some kind of miscommunication. But Lori does not believe Mark, and she starts doing a little bit of digging. And what she finds out is shocking. Turns out her husband, Mark, did not graduate from that pre-med program. He dropped out of college over 2 years ago. For over 2 years, Mark lied to everyone. For over 2 years, Mark would get up every single day to go to school. He would park down the street, wait till his wife, Lori, went to work. Then he would sneak back home and then just sit on the couch all day and play video games. Dropped out of college because he was too lazy to do the work, but then he put a lot of effort into his lies. He pretended to write papers, he pretended to do homework, he even pretended to be stressed out during finals week. On the day of his graduation ceremony, he pretended to be sick. And then when Mark was applying to all of these med schools, his wife Lori was paying for him to visit all of these schools. So she's paying for him to go on all these trips for nothing because he's not applying to med school because he dropped out of college 2 years ago. I'm so interested to know what Mark's plan was. Like after this, they were about to move across the entire country so Mark could go to med school in North Carolina. Was he gonna pretend to go to med school, and then was he gonna pretend to be a doctor? Like, what was his plan? Mark and Lori's loved ones even threw them a going away party. During the party, Lori acted like nothing was wrong. She didn't tell anyone that she just found out her husband was lying about everything. After the party's over, Lori pours out all of her feelings in a letter and gives that letter to her husband before going to bed. And in the letter, Lori pretty much threatens divorce if Mark doesn't change and if Mark doesn't admit to everyone about what he's been doing. In the letter, there's still so much hope. Like, it definitely seemed like Lori was willing to give her husband another chance, which is much better reaction than I would have had. But Mark did not react well to getting this letter. He actually got really, really mad. And the very next morning after reading this letter, Mark called the police to report his wife Lori as a missing person. Yes, the very next morning, Mark called the police to report that his 27-year-old pregnant wife Lori had gone jogging that morning and never came home. The investigation begins. They find Lori's car abandoned near a park where she usually jogged out, so at first it seemed like Mark's story was checking out. The police want to search Mark and Lori's home, which is very standard when someone goes missing, and Mark agrees and he lets the police in. In the home, they find Lori's purse, all of her belongings, her wedding ring, and her car keys. And at this point, Lori's car had already been found. So if Lori's car is found abandoned, how did her car keys end up back in her house? Something else really strange, the mattress that was on Mark and Lori's bed was brand new. You won't even believe this. They found a receipt that proved that Mark bought that mattress that was on his bed 16 minutes after calling to report his wife as a missing person. Literally, who does that? Who calls 911 to report their wife as a missing person and then go to the mattress store down the street and buy a new mattress? And also, where's the old mattress? And if that's not suspicious enough, in the nightstand next to their bed, they found a sharp weapon that was covered in Lori's blood. This is like the most guilty I've ever seen someone, and what's so crazy is that the police didn't have a search warrant. Mark let the police in, and he didn't have to, and he let them in knowing that all that evidence was in his house. And because I already told you that Mark loves attention, he did a lot of on-camera interviews where he pretended to cry for his missing pregnant wife.
I called her at about 10 o'clock to just say hi, see how she was doing, and they told me she... Sorry, she needed back to work. Anybody who can come. Please come. Tomorrow morning, I don't think they're going to let the volunteers up there tonight, but we're going to start at 6:30 tomorrow morning, and anybody who can possibly... If you can make it, please come.
And they did find their old mattress. It was in a dumpster down the street from their house, and the entire middle of the mattress had been cut out. And at this point, Mark knows that the police are onto him. He knows that he's going to be caught. So he needs to find a way to lie himself out of this. Mark is going to try and fake being insane. This is so crazy. I cannot believe that this actually happened. Mark actually took off all of his clothes and ran around in public to try and prove that he was too crazy to be held responsible. Mark was brought to a psychiatric facility while the police continued to investigate and dig into his background, and it was only then that it was revealed to everyone that Mark's entire life was a huge lie. And this was so shocking for his entire family, so much so that two of Mark's older brothers decided to go visit him in the hospital to try and find out the truth. And for probably the first time in Mark's entire life, he told the truth, and he confessed to his brothers about everything. He obviously told them about the lying, but he also told them about how he killed his wife Lori, his pregnant wife, while she slept so he could try and keep his secrets from coming out. And then he put his pregnant wife's body in a dumpster, like her and their unborn child were just trash to him, because he was hoping that they would be taken to the landfill and no one would find them. But for 2 months, they searched the landfill and they did find Lori. Mark took a plea deal and he was sentenced to 6 years to life in prison, which apparently was only the maximum sentence in the state at the time. But because of this case, the law was changed and now the maximum sentence is 15 years to life in prison. And Mark will be eligible for parole in 10 years in 2035. This case is so heartbreaking. It's so senseless and selfish. And this guy just really makes me sick. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and while you're there, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. And until then, I will see you guys in my next video.
And just when you think, oh, he can't possibly get any worse, you find out that his idol, the person that he looks up to, his role model, is Ted Bundy. Yeah, he loves him. Joel Rifkin was born in New York to 2 unmarried college students, but just 3 weeks later, he was adopted by Bernard and Jeanne Rifkin, a couple living in New York. A few years later, they expanded their family by adopting a daughter named Jan. And by 1965, the Rifkins had settled in East Meadow, Long Island, where Joel began attending elementary school. When he was a kid, Joel had a pretty hard time. He had a really hard time making friends, and he was often picked on and bullied a lot. He's been described as quite a shy kid that pretty much just kept to himself. And even though he was generally a pretty smart kid, his IQ was above average, he had a really hard time learning, and later on in his life, he would find out that was because he had undiagnosed dyslexia. When he moved on to high school, he continued to make efforts to try and feel like he belonged. He joined the track team, hoping that it would make it easier for him to make friends, but instead he was met with the complete opposite. He was bullied by his teammates heavily and constantly. Then he tried to join the yearbook staff, only to have his camera stolen and then to be left out of the group's end of year celebration. He also gained the nickname Joel the Turtle because of his posture. Kids are so mean. Anyway, year by year, it just felt like the bullying kept getting worse. The kids were so mean to him for no reason, and in return, he began to feel really lonely and really isolated. He also had no luck with girls, which only brought his confidence levels down further. And on top of that, it wasn't only his school life that was tough. His life at home was pretty tough as well, primarily because of his father. No matter what Joel did, it seemed like his father was disappointed with him all the time. He thought that Joel was a failure, and he would make sure that Joel knew that. All of these things in Joel's life played a part in him feeling really alone and really isolated, so he began keeping to himself even more. He was living in his own little world, keeping to himself, but quickly his own little world became very, very disturbing. He didn't have anything that he felt he was good at. He didn't have anything that he liked to do. He didn't have anyone to hang out with. His life at home was terrible. He basically just had himself and his free time. And with his free time, he grew an obsession with girls. And stay with me here, okay, because I can't say the word, but he grew an obsession with girls who worked in the streets. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Joel grew an obsession with these women, and he began to start fantasizing about what he would do to them. And he would internalize these fantasies until one day he went out on the streets, he found one of these girls to be intimate with him, and then he did it again and again and again. This was shortly after graduating high school and right as he started college, so around 1977. And suddenly, that was all he was doing. It became his fixation. He was skipping classes. He was barely showing up to his part-time jobs. He was spending most of his time and his money on that lifestyle. And the obsession left him nearly broke and constantly moving in and out of his parents' house. Throughout the 1980s, he also jumped from one college to the next, struggling with poor grades before finally dropping out in 1984. Joel's obsession with being intimate with women quickly turned dark. It got really scary really fast, and his fantasies were now what they had been, but now incorporating extremely disturbing and harmful behavior. He wanted to hurt them, and he wouldn't be able to fight off these fantasies for long, and sooner than later he would turn them into a reality. In 1987, Joel's father passed away. He was living at his parents' house, but now it was only him, his mother, and his sister. And by March of 1989, Joel would bring his fantasies to life. One night in March of 1989, while his mother was away on a business trip, Joel picked up a young woman who was going by the name of Susie, who was working in the streets. He brought her back to his Long Island home, and his twisted urges took over. Almost immediately after they were intimate, he picked up a big heavy metal object and went after her with force, over and over again until she was gone. Now Joel was standing in his family home, standing over his first victim, and then he took a nap. In the middle of trying to figure out how he was going to clean up the horror scene that he had just created, he took a nap, a 6-hour nap. Sorry, because how do you just doze off and decide to take a quick little rest in the middle of that? When he woke up, he decided his best bet was going to be to take the body apart into pieces, and he went to disturbing lengths to erase her identity, removing her fingerprints and all of her teeth. He placed her head into an oil paint can and put the rest of her in trash bags. He loaded the trash bags inside of his mother's car, drove to the woods in New Jersey and disposed of her legs, then drove to a river and disposed of her head. But despite his efforts to try and hide what he had done, a man came across the paint can, and he opened it up and saw Susie's head inside of it. He, of course, immediately reported this to authorities, but tragically, investigators would not be able to identify the victim. Because Joel had removed every single one of her teeth, they also had no clue and no leads as to who could have possibly done this, and just like that, Joel got away with it. An entire year passed before Joel would claim his second victim, a woman named Julie Blackbird, who he also picked up on the street. Just like he did before, he waited until his mother was away before bringing Julie back to his house in Long Island. The next morning, Joel grabbed a table leg and completely lashed out on Julie with it until she tragically lost her life. He took her body apart just like he had done previously, but this time he placed the remains into buckets. He weighed them down with concrete and disposed of them in the East River in a canal in Brooklyn. 9 months later, in 1991, Joel picked up Barbara Jacobs. He did the same thing to her as he had done to the previous two. She was now his third victim. Afterwards, Joel put Barbara's body into a huge cardboard box, disposed of the box in a river. However, this time around, he had decided to leave the body intact, all in one piece, and very quickly someone found the box floating in the river. They saw the body. They were horrified, but authorities yet again were not able to identify who the victim was, and Joel got away with it for a third time. In September of 1991, Joel did the same thing again to 22-year-old Mary Ellen DeLuca, but this time he did it in a motel. He disposed of her body by placing it in a truck and leaving it in a parking lot, and by the time that her body was discovered, authorities were not able to identify who the victim was. Weeks later, Joel took the life of 31-year-old Yun Lee and disposed of her body in the East River. When her body was found, she was identified luckily, but authorities still had no leads. They had no idea who they were looking for in connection to her case. A few days before Christmas, Joel acted again, ending the life of 28-year-old Lorraine. He placed her body in a 55-gallon oil drum and disposed of it in Coney Island Creek. Her body would remain undiscovered for 6 months. He did the same thing again to 39-year-old Mary Ann, whose remains were also discovered inside of an oil drum in Coney Island Creek. Joel later claimed there were another 2 victims who he disposed of in oil drums, although he couldn't remember their names, nor could he remember the timelines of when he did it. Joel's final victim was a woman called Tiffany. She was originally from Louisiana, but she had moved to New York chasing her dreams of becoming an actress. Sadly, instead, she fell down the wrong path and began using substances and eventually found herself working in the streets. In the early hours of June 24th, 1993, Tiffany became Joel's second victim of that night and his 4th victim in just 2 days. He picked her up on Allen Street and drove to the New York Post parking lot, where he cut off her air supply with his hands until she was no longer alive. Afterwards, he drove to East Meadow, stopping on the way to pick up rope and a tarp while Tiffany's body laid in the back seat. When he got back to his mother's house, he wrapped her up in the tarp and placed her body in the trunk of his mother's car. Shortly after his mom got back home, she requested the keys to her car, and then she took the car and went on a 30-minute shopping spree, completely unaware that in the trunk of her vehicle there was a body. Joel during that time was freaking out, thinking that his mother might find the body, but she didn't. She never opened that trunk. And when she got back, Joel moved Tiffany's body into their cluttered garage, placing her in a wheelbarrow. For the next 3 days, Joel worked fixing up his pickup truck in his garage, casually outside in the heat, as the body was slowly decomposing inside of the garage. After those 3 days, he was heading out to dispose of the body. He was around 15 miles away from his house when 2 state troopers pulled him over for a missing rear license plate. When police tried to pull him over, Joel kept driving. I guess he thought, if I stop, maybe they will go away. If I pretend that I don't see them, maybe they'll drive past me. But they didn't. They just kept chasing him. They chased him for 20 minutes until Joe accidentally crashed his car into a utility pole right outside of the local courthouse. And the chase was over. As officers approached his vehicle, they noticed a foul, strong smell coming from the trunk. The source of the smell was Tiffany's decomposing body. Joel Rifkin was immediately arrested and taken into custody. When he was taken into custody, authorities are thinking, okay, he is one victim. We found the victim's body in the trunk. But Joel takes a seat. He takes a seat and tells them that he is ready to chat. And he sits there for 8 hours and confesses to ending the lives of 17 women. He described all 17 in disturbing detail, writing out the names of the victims which he remembered, which were not all, and even sketching maps to help the police find the victims that were still missing. Joel Rifkin confessed to taking 17 lives, but only 10 to 12 of his victims were ever positively identified. The rest sadly remain as unidentified Jane Does. Many body parts were found in various states of decomposition, dumped in places like rivers, wooded areas, and oil drums around New York and New Jersey. When his trial began, listen to this, when his trial began, even though he literally sat there for 8 hours and confessed, he pled not guilty. But of course, he was found guilty. However, they were only able to convict him of 9 counts of second-degree murder. But in 1994, he was sentenced to 203 years in prison. Joel, today, is still alive. He's 66 years old and remains behind bars in New York. Yeah, sick guy. I don't know what else to say. I'm disgusted. That is all I have for today's story. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Go listen to the newest episode of the podcast if you haven't already, linked in my bio. But yeah, I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.